Hello everybody and welcome to another live here in London. So as you've probably seen from the bits and pieces that I posted, I will be traveling from next week. A little bit more about that in a second. So welcome aboard everybody. Lots of people here, lots of regulars, so good to see you all. I've changed back my mic to the old system, had very mixed views with how I did it last week. So hopefully you find that better. Okay, so if you're here live, remember write the word question, because then I know that it's a question and it doesn't get lost in all the chit chat, which is always great to see. And if you're watching this afterwards, many people do watch it afterwards, I do bring up the various questions. Remember, this is a live. Now, one of the things I've noticed actually they've introduced, but I think it's going to be very distracting, is the system's now brought up a thing where over here, it will bring up the various comments as they come in. I think that might be too distracting. So maybe I won't do that, but I might play around with it a little bit during the course of this. So I have been muted. My mic's suddenly muted there. I can see it muted. It switched microphone for some reason, which is a bit annoying. Anyway, back to that. I want to do a few housekeeping things really quickly. So out this week, yesterday was my Explorer Journeys video, which came out yesterday. So that is proving quite popular so far. And also linked to that, you'll get a link to the actual ship tour that's happening as well. So I can also see my Wi-Fi is playing up today, which is also very annoying, but hopefully this is all running fine. I can see the signal for some reason has dropped low, but normally the audio keeps going, so hopefully that won't be too disruptive. So I'm actually heading off tomorrow morning. I'm heading to Barcelona, spending some days staying with some friends who are having a 60th near Sitges, and then next Saturday, so this time next week, I'll be on board a Sky Princess. So it's from Barcelona to Naples. It's a 7-night cruise. I'm very excited to actually be trying out Sun Princess. Obviously, I was on Sky Princess on Paul and Carol's cruise, so this will be very interesting. I'm actually trying out their sanctuary offering, so we will also see how that stacks up, because they're sort of claiming to offer a very different experience versus their other ships. So that's going to be very interesting to see. Now, certainly in the videos that I've watched, sort of my research, very mixed views from people around the ship. It seems diehard Princess people have more mixed views about it because it is quite a different ship. So that's going to be really, really interesting indeed. So I'm looking forward to that. One of the things I'm going to touch very briefly on, because I don't want to labor it, don't want to get questions. I have spoken in the past about kind of my patrons and my members. And I've had a few emails this week from people asking me why I'm putting more things behind a paywall, which I just want to stress that I'm not putting anything that I didn't used to do behind. I used to, since 2019, I have had a weekly video out every week on the channel. I have had sorry, I can see my video there keeps freezing, so I'm not too sure why. So hopefully this will keep going. The Wi-Fi has of course been fine. The minute I do the live this week is easy playing up. So anyway, I do a weekly live video. That hasn't changed. I do these weekly live streams, which I do pretty much every single week. And also now I've actually started launching lots of those little shorts, those little up to 60-second shorts. So I have those. Those are all on the channel. They're free. There's nothing behind a paywall there. So I haven't changed anything that I'm doing there. I then do have Patreon and channel memberships where I do kind of bonus content. So I do things behind the scene, how the channel works. I do behind the scene when I'm on a cruise, like when I'm on Sun Princess, I'll make kind of on the cruise vlogs with some sort of thinking, answering questions, kind of bouncing things off people. If you're a patron, all the videos that are on the channel, they get released early. There's ebook downloads and so on. And then there's the group cruises, because I sort of, to manage the numbers of group cruises, they've kind of open to patrons and members. They haven't gone further than that. So I just want to stress people that nothing is going behind the paywall that wasn't there before. It's kind of more kind of bonus content. Anyway, I just want to do that because a couple of people would ask me the question. So hopefully this Wi-Fi is going to be play nicely from here onwards. So let's get on to the questions. John has asked a question, hope all is well. Yes. Have you cruised the east coast of Australia? And if so, your comments and cruise line recommendations, please. So I have done the east coast of Australia. So I guess you're talking Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Cairns, Darwin. So I have done that. I've done that on I've actually done Queen Mary 2. And it's been really great. What I really would like to do is the circumnavigation. So I've also separated done the Kimberley up the top, but I haven't done that bit around the bottom. So in terms of cruise line recommendations, there's quite a few lines that do it. Now, a few lines have moved away from Australia, but you've got during the sort of the key season, so between sort of November and March time, you've got a couple of cruise lines that will sort of be based there, like Princess, Celebrity, Carnival are there year round. Obviously, they're now P&O Australia have merged in, and Celebrity Apex is there. Now, a lot of the ones out of Sydney, like Celebrity Apex, Celebrity Edge, will often do the New Zealand trip mostly. But a lot of it, John, depends on what experience you're looking for. So you'll also find a lot of the ships going through on their world cruises will often do that. So if you're looking for a very adult experience, you've got Viking, do a lot of itineraries out of there. If you're looking for a premium experience, you've got your Holland Americas, your Princess. Kunard will go through this part of the world cruise. And if you want to try something much more Australian, they do have the Carnival product that's there. So a lot of it hinges on the itinerary, I think. Chris is asking the question. Good to see you, Chris. Regular, always have lots of questions. You've got the AMA, Christmas Danube, and Explore Mediterranean cruise, my fault. So hopefully that video has helped you a lot. For 27, who is your one favorite Alaska for 14 days? Hope the train will be part of it. Best dates for less crowd and kids. So actually, it's interesting enough. The video that's coming out next week, Chris, is actually about Alaska. So every now a couple of years, I update my Alaska content because things do evolve and change. So I do tackle a little bit there. So certainly look out for that next week. But doing 14 days Alaska trips, if you're talking about only on the cruise, so there's many cruise lines will do a 7-night inside passage normally, or they'll do the north-south, south-north, and link a week or 5 days or whatever up in Denali National Park. So that's a really good combination if you want to see more of Alaska. And many of those will be sort of 14 days. Now, some of them will also tie the Rocky Mountaineer, but certainly you can do, if you go like the Princess, Holland America, they have their own trains, which have it's about a 7-8 hour train trip from the port all the way down to Denali, which is quite magical. So a lot of it, again, Chris, hinges on what you're looking for. Now, by 27, actually, Explorer, I think you're going to be in Alaska by then. But in terms, if you're looking for longer trips, you've got a couple of interesting ones, not many. So Seabourn have a 14-day trip. Hurtigruten have one which is much more focused. It won't include the train because it doesn't include like Skagway. It goes to the less frequent ports. It's more wildlife focused. But you'll find some of the Holland America, some of the Princess will do sort of the back-to-back ones. You need to look at those very carefully because a lot of them will be duplicate ports. So you need to look at some of the Viking Seabourn itineraries, for example. So you don't find many that do that many 14 days, which are not kind of doubling back, because 7 nights is a key thing. So the train, you've obviously got the Skagway train, which is fantastic, but you also look at, you've got Rocky Mountaineer, and if you're doing the combined thing, you've got that train trip. And you can also, if you're sailing out of, like I'm sailing out of Seward toward the end of August, you also have a couple of trains, short trains, which will get you to those couple of hours. So the best dates for less crowd and kids, Alaska's always busy. So May, early June, and sort of September, October, so after the schools go back, is the quietest time. So Lucia is able to join, which is great. Diane asking, can you get walk-ins on the Ocean and Marina for the specialty restaurants in addition to the one booking per cruise we're entitled to book? Diane, usually you can. The best thing to do is walk-ins is more challenging. It's better to try and get additional bookings. So there is a little booking desk. So one of the things when you get on board, go and have a look at what, play around with your bookings. Build a nice relationship with the person who's doing the bookings and just keep popping back. Obviously, if you're in a suite, one of the premium cabins, you can go as often as you like, but normally you can. So I have been relatively fortunate. I've gone to Red, Ginger, more than once. So, but you need to go and talk to the person who's doing the bookings. And if you're particularly, you'll find a lot of people might towards the end of the cruise kind of do it less so. But normally speaking, it's pretty good. Unless the ship is really full, I guess. Some good advice from Diane about the Fusnia port, making the point, and I think we did talk a little bit about this, the importance of, there's not a lot of infrastructure there. So, not necessarily taxing things, so it's good to have pre-booked stuff. Just remember to write the word question so I don't miss it. Tom, I didn't miss yours. Have a May 2026 Paul Gauguin 11-day Society Islands cruise. Very, very nice. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the updated Paul Gauguin ship is like, because I did some big renovations in Singapore recently. We have 4.5 days prior and investigating a Bora Bora, Moorea, Tahiti options. Yes, I would, Tahiti itself and the Pepperhead is fine. Bora Bora, of course, is absolutely magnificent. That's what we did after our last time. We went there for 4 nights to Bora Bora. It's beautiful. It's very expensive. It's very beautiful resorts. We actually hired some e-bikes and cycled all the way around Bora Bora. There's some very interesting little, excursions you can do where you can go and swim with sharks, do the snorkeling. There's quite a lot to do in Bora Bora, beautiful beaches and so on. Moorea is also very nice as well. Again, very nice beaches. So, but if you can, Bora Bora is pretty good. It's an hour flight, I remember, a 40-minute flight out of Papeete. So we actually did the Paul Gauguin. We got off Paul Gauguin, went to the airport. There's actually a problem with flights that day, so they're delayed, but they're very frequent flights there. But that's what I would recommend. Greg booked a 10-night Alaska cruise staying in Queen's Corolla, Queen Elizabeth this month. Very nice. Being charged $36 a night in gratuities. Yeah, I think it's about $18 per person, isn't it? Something like that in Queen's Corolla. How much would you be expected as a tip to the butler and the steward? So, of course, Greg, because gratuities are included, there is no specific need to tip on top, of course. That's entirely up to you. So, to be honest, being a Brit, we're probably less tip culturally wise. So we tend to tip based on service. So we have normally tipped the butler and often tipped the steward. In fact, on our last trip on Kunard, which is on Queen Anne, we didn't tip the butler. He was pretty useless. It was his first, he'd never worked on ships before. He'd never been a butler. And he just got things wrong. We kept on asking things, he could get them wrong. He wouldn't do things. So we actually didn't tip him anything on top because we didn't feel he was worth it. Our steward, though, was fantastic. And we did actually tip him. But we only tipped a couple of dollars, $3 or $4 per night, just, as a sort of a thank you on top of the gratuities. So we didn't go particularly big. I mean, literally it was like $3 or $4 a night extra, which is what I sort of do when I'm on cruises that include tips. So, for example, on Sky Princess, I had a really great cabin steward. He was very helpful. I wanted him to do my room first in the morning when he first came on because I got up early and I went to breakfast early. And I said to him, like, when you start at 8 o'clock, will you do my cabin first? Will you do my cabin at 6:30 or whatever? And he did that. He always did it. He was really helpful, very friendly, always checking in with me. So I actually gave him $3 or $4, I think maybe $5 or something, because it was something like that. So that's what I would tend to do. I think there's a couple more questions on Kunard, which I'll come to, which I'm sure is around the new charges that they're doing. But I'll come to that. So Donna, do you know what is the new requirements for UK residents traveling to Europe this year? It's due down in October 2025. That's when I travel. So Donna, there's 2 things happening, one of which you're right is happening this year. So what's due to happen, and again, it's been much postponed, but around about that time, Europe is introducing their EES, which is the entry-exit system. And this is a new computerized system which will require everybody from a third country, so that of course is the UK, the US, Australia, anyone that's basically not in the EU, we'll have to have our photograph taken and our fingerprints taken. And that's what's due to happen the first time that we go in. So if you're flying in, now it's not 100% clear if you were doing a cruise out of the UK that calls into Europe yet, what that process is going to be. But certainly if you're flying in, like we're doing, flying into Barcelona, I won't have to do it this time. But so that's what they're doing initially. Now, theoretically, you won't have to have that done after it'll be in the database. Then what's going to be happening, though, next year, again, much delayed, is they're introducing the ETIAS, which is the same as the ESTA if you're visiting the US or Canada or Australia. Or, of course, if people come to the UK now, you have to get an ETA. But that's delayed. Now, the good news is for well, hopefully the good news is for UK residents is that what they're due to happen after the EES has come in, once our fingerprints have been taken, is there is an agreement with the EU that UK residents will start to be able to use the e-gates, which will speed up that whole process. So the idea of the EES is it'll remove the stamping of passports once it's up and running. Because at the moment, as you know, like when I go to Barcelona, I have to queue up and have to get your passport stamped under the sort of the Brexit, and also if you're the US. So that's basically what's happening. So it'll more be a process rather than anything else. But do bear in mind, keep an eye out if we introduce the ETIS, but they have announced that it is moving now. And I think you're right, in October is the current date, but it keeps shifting around the date. But that's certainly the other one. Lou's enjoying the audio, so that's good. Michael asked a question: have you done a cruise that goes through the Canal in Greece? Yes, I have. Yes. Is it recommended? It's fantastic. I did it on Windstar, on Star Pride, no, Star Breeze, I think it was. Sea Dune does it, Scenic, Emerald. Windstar does it as well. So it is fantastic. You also, I think, I'm around seeing some of the smaller Fred Olsen do it, but you're right, it has to be a pretty small ship. It was really tight and close. If you're a kind of a Canal geek, it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I do have a video on my channel, which is a time lapse of it. So if you go to my channel, Tips for Travelers, and just search Corinth Canal, it's a very short video, like a minute or two. But you're right, but certainly Windstar definitely does it. And I did see someone recently on Fred Olsen do it as well, and it's really good fun. Is it as dramatic as going through the Panama Canal or stuff? No, it's not. It's really short, but it's pretty good. Bob, I cannot actually answer this question. We have 2 stops in the Azores on Regent Splendor. What are the must-see sites? So I have only been to the Azores once. We just did some self-exploring. Now I do actually have the Azores and 2 stops on the Azores later next year only, when I'm doing one of the repositioning cruises on Crystal, which I booked. Incredible, like dirt cheap thing, and we have 2 stops in the Azores. So I don't have that yet. So if anyone does have any great tips for those, pop those in. I can't remember the names of the 2 places. We certainly self-explored, had a great time. I have looked at some of the excursions, but haven't locked them in. The other thing, Bob, is if you go to a site like whatsimport.com, search those Azores stops, it will have some hints. And one of the things I also often do, which I actually refer to in an upcoming video, is I will often just go on YouTube and put Azores Port Guide. But I don't have better tips. So if anyone has tips, pop those in there, because that will also help me enormously. Let's have a look. Warren, more of a comment from San Antonio. I thought your cons on MSC regarding children. So I think you're probably talking about, I assume you're talking about the new Explorer journeys, where they're pushing, they're focusing very hard on children, and the excursions deal breaker. Yes, it is a different experience from a Regent. It's a very nice ship. I liked it. Although it's interesting, people felt it was a more bland experience. I really liked it. It's very good on food. It's really good. It's a nice experience, but you're right, it is definitely targeting more family, so you need to be much more cautious about when you go. Anthony, here's the question that everyone's talking about at the moment, I think. Thoughts on Kunard's news that aside from breakfast, all room service for Britannia passengers will be a charge? Will things like this diminish their luster and further erode their brand? So I'm sure most people know this is happening, but I'll just recap this. So basically what Kunard have announced is that, and I think it's now in effect already, is if you're in Britannia from 10 a.m. in the morning, you'll now be charged for room service, and it's charged per item. So it's not a per tray charge or whatever. It's an item, whereas before, of course, it was included within the fare. Breakfast is still included. So will things like diminish? So basically, I mean, it's very interesting, Anthony, because Kunard is part, as you know, of Carnival Corporation. But now the way it's actually run is in the UK, they've made some changes not so long ago, where the guy, Paul Ludlow, who was managing P&O, now many people don't feel he's done a particularly good job with P&O, but they've definitely made it a more mass market, more value brand, more family focused. They've stripped a lot of cost out to make fares lower, so the fares are much lower. More extra charge, more extra venues, and he's now Kunard now reports to him as well. So a lot of people see this as part of a trend. I'm assuming part of the trend is maybe to improve the profitability of Kunard. I don't know, because obviously we can't see all the details of that, but it could be to improve the profitability of Kunard. But we are starting to see more added charges. So for example, when Queen Anne came in, there was added charges for some of the food in the pub. Come on, mine went completely blank. Golden Lion. So some of the items that were charged there, they've started to charge for the Bright Light Society, which was originally included in the fare. So there are sort of more charges coming on. I mean, I think Kunard is, and of course, I'm a historical fan of Kunard, less so probably these days. Kunard is an interesting brand because Kunard, sort of in their advertising, obviously positions themselves as quite a luxurious brand. In reality, I don't think it's particularly luxurious. It is more British. It has more kind of dressing up, a little bit more of the traditional pomp. But actually, it's not that different, in my view, from a Holland America celebrity that it kind of competes with in reality. So I think they are a brand with a little bit of a what are we about? How will we evolve? How will we talk to new people and improving profitability? I think we're going to see more and more changes coming, as they look. So I think this is the beginning of a trend. And yes, I do think that Kunard need to figure out much more what they are. So we booked a transatlantic next year because for me that's the only real true unique thing about Kunard these days in terms of the overall experience. Queen Mary 2, transatlantic, it's a very different experience. Obviously, if you go in Alaska or the Mediterranean or wherever you're going for the more British thing, it is obviously probably the last bastion of dressing up on those formal nights, so that's much more relaxed on less formal nights. So I do think they're kind of struggling a little bit. I don't know if I'll answer your question terribly well. Garth has left a super chat or whatever they're called. Thank you very much. I have Alaskan cruise in 2 weeks. Can't wait. Planning on next one. Which do you prefer, Mediterranean or Australia/New Zealand? Okay, great question. Have a great trip. Hopefully my Alaska videos have helped you there. I've got another one coming out next week, which probably won't help you. So what do I prefer? So I have been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in Europe, both when I was working and traveling. And I've done quite a few Mediterranean cruises now. I've used I obviously have spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. I track it, but also I've put a lot of my cruises into the Cruise Globe, which I think most of you know about. So the cruiseglobe.com. It's a free site. It's created by the guys who create the cruise maps. Who do this kind of more formal, the actual printed maps. But the cruiseglobe.com, you can input all of your cruises. And then when I look at the Med, for me is very kind of busy. So for me, absolutely, Australia, New Zealand is way more interesting because I've been to Australia, again, fortunately enough, quite a few times. I've been to New Zealand, cruised it once. So I would definitely prefer that because it's more exotic, places that I haven't seen. I'm very spoiled. But I think overall, obviously, the Mediterranean is a magical place if you haven't been to the Mediterranean because there's so much history, very iconic places. Me personally, if you ask me personally, for me, Australia, New Zealand, obviously is kind of the thing that really just kind of leaps out and appeals to me at the moment. And I really do want to do more Australian cruising. I mentioned earlier, I really want to do the circumnavigation. Very, very much want to do the circumnavigation and looking at those options. Greg, I don't know if I can answer this, but when on Queen Elizabeth, who would be best to chat over a billing issue? Prefer not to do the standing at the counter with a line of people behind me. Sit down with someone if possible. So Greg, in reality, your only real option is to be in the counter. Now, obviously, if you're in Britannia, you'd have to go to the purser's desk, as they call it. If you are in Princess Grill or in Queen's Grill, you can go to the concierge desk, but basically you're going to have to go and talk to the purser. Now, what you could do, Greg, although I suspect they won't be very forthcoming, is say to them that you have a billing issue and you want to talk to someone in private in a room. You could request that, but it will be someone from the purser's desk, and they might bring someone from behind, in the purser's sort of team. But there's no other way than asking to to speak to someone privately. And you could do that, saying, look, I have some issues. I don't want to talk about it in public. I want to talk to someone privately. That's the best solution that I can think of offhand. Let's have a look. Find awkward to click into Patron use on computer. Ask, sign in, of course, good, yet slows you down. Any hints for anyone? Thank you for explaining the difference early in this report. I remember. Marilyn, so there's obviously two key things. There's Patreon and then there's channel members. So if it's on Patreon, one of the easiest things to do if you are on Patreon is to use the app. So they do have, that's how I actually interact. So I'm patrons. Let me see if I can bring up my Patreon app. So I'm patron of I follow various different people. So let me just see if I put this onto my, I'm probably going to spend too much time changing this now, but you know, you can be as you know, so on the app, on the Patreon app, what I find easy is, so the people that I follow, I tend to would look at and respond on the app, because the app, so when the email alert comes in, obviously when the queue it goes in, but on the app you're kind of signed in, so it's much easier to comment and reply and all that sort of stuff. So I tend to use the app. One of the things I know with Patreon is a lot of people have ended up with two different sign-ins. So if you ever go into Patreon and you've signed in using Google, but you've created another account, that confuses Patreon a lot, because people will log in thinking, well, I've signed up, but I haven't signed up. If you're on channel member, which is on YouTube, it's much more complicated. You're right, because it's just a feed. It's just in your normal feed, and it's much more difficult to find the individual, the much more individual posts. That's why I tend to talk more about Patreon, and I tend to follow creators that I follow, both other travel ones and in other, you know, other areas that I follow. I tend to follow them as patrons, because I just find that much easier. Because you're right, because otherwise it's very hard to find that flow as members. I think it's a real trick from YouTube, actually. Just want to write the word question. I did see your question, Miranda. Would you go on Regent Explorer for Alaska? Yes, I would do. It's obviously more costly than some of the other options, but Regent, I like the Explorer ship. I did Japan with that. And you're right, they sort of do the Alaska and they do Japan. Some interesting repositionings, I think, on it as well. But it's a good sized ship. Obviously, it's a very nice upmarket. The excursions are included. I haven't looked at the specific inclusions, but yes, I would definitely see those there. Databatics making a real point. This is a huge issue. I think this can become a massive issue. Is there's already 700 individual sailings in Alaska. There's something like 50 ships there, and more going. You know, Virgin is starting to send ships. People are sending ships, and I think we're going to see real pressure. Now, obviously, there's been discussions in Alaska and different ports talking about restricting. There was a poll recently, or a referendum in Icy Strait Point. They voted against restricting the amount of visits, but it is getting really crowded and busy. So I think we're going to see much more stuff. But we're seeing, for example, Juneau wants to introduce a tax, and the cruise lines are pushing against it. So I think you're right, it's getting a little bit busy. It's going to be very interesting to see whether how that settles down. Mark, I hear mixed reports on whether or not the gross deck on Queen Anne is now cruise card / pin access and stop being used as cut through. Mark, certainly friends of mine who were on recently said that they weren't in Queen's Crawler, and they found it very annoying because they could not get through because you did have to use your card. So that was certainly about a month or so ago. So they have introduced the system, whether it ended up getting left open or not. It's actually quite annoying if you're not in Queen's Crawler, because it was up on deck. I can't remember the deck it is. You have to go down and up if you can't walk through the deck. But they definitely had introduced something. Andrea, is there any other cruise line that offers you your own dedicated dining table for the duration of a cruise, like you with Princess or Queen's Crawler? So Andrea, the only way you can do that is to go fixed dining overall. So if you go on pretty much most cruise lines, you know, if you go, whether it's Norwegian, Holland America, Princess, Celebrity, etc. But you'd have to go fixed dining to get a dedicated dining table. So you'd have to go at the same time. So for example, on Sky Princess, that I was on last time, because with the group cruise, they were doing fixed dining. So we had, although we actually moved between our tables, but we had a fixed area. So you need to go on fixed dining. But if you're talking about what Princess and Queen School have, which is your own table, but anytime dining, that is really more of a function on Kunard. I'm trying to think if there's any other, even if you use other places, like even if you go, for example, if you go on Celebrity and you're in a concierge cabin, so you've got the Blue restaurant, or you're going in the retreat, so you've got Lumini, you don't have your own table. It's anytime dining, but you don't have your own table. So you need to really go fixed dining. Now, I cannot think of any other cruise line at any grade that has the equivalent of that. That is fairly unique. Let's have a look. Warren's asking, what benefit would MSC give to a Regent Platinum as a status? Okay, so Warren, I don't know the exact match, but basically MSC. So if you're talking MSC rather than Explorer, so I'll talk a little bit about the two, because you asked a question earlier, and I think it might have been about Explorer. So if you go on MSC cruises, so the main mass market line, they will sort of match it. Now, I actually, for example, I had Platinum, which is the highest tier on Kunard, and I used that to status match MSC when I went on Virtuosa, and they gave me kind of an equivalent, which I think was gold. So whatever the perks of gold were, which I think was some special dining, some discounts, and that sort of stuff. Now, if you're talking about Explorer Journeys, you can actually have a look at the site. So I think if you go to Explorer Journeys, you search Explorer Journeys status match, they will tell you roughly what they'll match. So I had, I status match with Silver Sea, because they obviously they're only matching ultra luxury lines, and you're right, Regent is one of them. They will tell you roughly what they will match. So I can't remember the status what I have, but I got the second highest status, because I don't have the highest status on it, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good perks. Oh, Miranda's asking the question, would I go on a which year to Vancouver? Absolutely. I love that itinerary. That for me is the best itinerary in Alaska. If it's a 10-nighter normally, more nights in Alaska. I think it's a fantastic itinerary. I would definitely do that one. I think it's just brilliant. Just remember to write the word question if I miss it. Let's have a look. Janice, thank you for your videos on visiting London. Good. Any tips on our upcoming transatlantic cruises? I do have, if you're talking about specifically on the thing to do on the transatlantic cruises, I do have a video, Janice. So if you search, if you go to the channel Tips for Travel, if you just search transatlantic, I have a video there which comes up with tips. Now that's specific to the Queen Mary 2 transatlantic. I do have another video, if you search repositioning, where I address lots of tips. It's more tips around more about planning and choosing. If it's a Queen Mary 2 transatlantic, I get much more into the detail of that. So hopefully that will answer your question. So let me just have a little slug here. Just want to write the word question, so make sure I don't miss your question. James, do you think Explorer Journeys is pushing more on families now, as they've been selling under capacity? The original push was 50+ castles target. No, James, I don't think that. The Ponte family have always been extremely pro-family, and it's part of their kind of their belief. They've always spoken about that. So certainly, when I looked back, at Explorer Journeys, they built kids clubs, children's clubs, and if someone didn't like that, I call them kids, but everyone calls them kids clubs. But they built those. They have on the Explorer 3 and 4 expanding the clubs, so they'd always built that in. I mean, you're right. Obviously, families are going to be more restricted in terms of timing because they're going to go more in school holiday time. Although we were less school holiday time, so we had a lot of more toddlers, for example, which is more of an issue in reality because the clubs only start for age of 6, and they are talking about perhaps lowering that. So toddlers will be kind of more around the ship because they don't have a club to do that. But I think they've always been that. But you're right, they do have, of forgotten what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought. I've completely lost my train of thought there. But anyway, yes, I think they've always focused on kids. They've got the kids clubs there. Children and family, multi-generational is very important. They do talk on the website a lot about many multi-generational stuff as well. Whips Travel, first live as a new subscriber. Thank you very much. Do you have any group cruises booked in the future? So we, of course, I guess, met on Paul and Carol's group cruise. So I do have, I'll bring it up actually. Let me just take this off because I'm going to be over the top there. I only have one group cruise planned, and that is the following, which is the Panama Canal group cruise. It's in 2026 from the 31st of January to the 15th of February. It's on Holland America Zeta Dam, and that's the itinerary. So Miami, it's a 15-night cruise, and that's the only one that I have planned. It is theoretically sold out, but we can get more cabins. We still have some at the group rate, and so you should find the link. You should when you became a member, you should have found that. But I will actually maybe post an update to channel members with that again as well. But that is the only one that I have. Michael Kerman, if exploring cruises service seems hit or miss at times, absolutely. Would you place the line in ultra luxury category? If not, where? So, going into it, I certainly see it more as in the sort of the small ship luxury side. So I see it very much more. They see themselves as ultra luxury without a shadow of a doubt. I personally feel they are much more of a realistic competitor in the product to the small ship luxury. So there you've got Viking, you've got Oceania. Now, bear in mind, so Oceania, of course, they're getting rid of the small R-class ships. They're phasing those out. So their ships are 1,200, 1,250 passengers. You've got Explorer Journeys, which can go up to around that sort of level. I've got the exact numbers, 950, if I'm 920. You've got Viking in there as well, which is not about the same as that. You've also got sort of Windstar, Azamara and stuff in there, but certainly that's where I see them positioned. Also because of the amount, although they do have quite a lot of inclusions there that you don't get in the others, but they see themselves very much as ultra luxury, as you've probably seen and watched the video. That's who they're they say is their competitor, and that's who they're price matching with. But I think that they're, for me, they feel more simply because also the ships are of that size. They're not of the ultra luxury kind of size. Although of course the ships are getting bigger. The new Regent ships, the Prestige, are about 850, so not that far off. Keith, my wife and I will be in Oceania Vista for the 2026 World Cruise. Very nice. Are there possibilities of major itinerary changes on lengthy cruises? Well, Keith, the biggest watch out, which I think I'm right in saying, but I can't remember offhand, the biggest risk with world cruises, of course, is some of the world cruises, certainly as I look at them ahead, I think it's more the 27 ones, still assume that the Suez Canal is going to be routable. They're going to go through it. That, of course, it's not at the moment, and we don't know when that will be. So for me, that is the biggest risk of world cruises. But I think I'm right in saying that the 2026 Oceania doesn't include the Suez Canal. If it does, for me, that's the biggest risk of all. And as I said, I've seen some 27, 28 ones that are assuming that. I think, that's a big risk. So in terms of major itinerary changes, what we're seeing generally, Keith, is the world cruises don't tend to have big changes unless it's something blows up, politically, militarily, whatever. You will find probably inevitably there'll be some weather or other issues. So when we did half of the world cruise on Queen Victoria from Southampton round through Panama Canal, Hawaii, etc., there was cyclones coming through, and we never got to Samoa and Fiji and that sort of stuff. We had to skip all that. It's that, but that was more weather related. So that's the main risk. At the moment is that geographic risk. And I was quite interested, actually, how many of the 27 world cruises do have the Suez Canal transit in. That still seems very challenging. Edward, you've got your first Explorer Journeys cruise in July. Understand Fil Rouge and the Mediterranean yacht. are non-reservable in advance. Yet if you do not reserve, one of the ships are long waits. So Edward, this is actually something I got asked a lot and was asked to check out a lot. So but basically, what I found and what they told me, and actually what they did on my cruise, was when the ship is quite full. Now we were only 75% full, but they said that you could, once you're on board, book Fil Rouge and Medyacht dining times. So you could actually book it to avoid the waits, as it were. Now in reality, I did it, but because we were in 75% full, and actually I go to the early dine. I go early dining because I like to go, because I can video more when it's less busy. I can video my food without feeling I'm being intrusive, but I can sort of video the restaurant. So I go at like can't remember what time they opened. Did they open at 7 or 6:30? I can't remember what time. I think they opened at 7. So I would go really early, and then it was very easy. Never any queues, any lines. Now I have heard from some people when the ship was much fuller in the Caribbean, there was more of a wait, but certainly I didn't experience that. What people did say who dined a little bit later is they did find that the service was less good, coming back to one of the questions before, which I didn't experience when it was obviously quieter. But certainly if the ship is full, they are allowing people to book specific times. Now, I don't know how well that works because, again, it wasn't massively busy at that time. So that's what likely to happen. Somebody asking, is there an affiliate link to the Cruise Globe? Okay, so let me talk about that very quickly. Let me bring up a few bits and pieces. That's a great question. So the Cruise Globe, let me see, I've got a thing with the Cruise Globe here. So the Cruise Globe, that's a little scan if you want to go. So there is no affiliate code for the Cruise Globe because the Cruise Globe is a completely free thing. There's no fee to join. There's no fee to use it. So there's no sale, if you like. There's no kind of commission to be paid. So it's the cruiseglobe.com. So there's no affiliate thing for that at all. They're not really tracking who's sending stuff there. I mean, they have asked us to talk more and more about it, but there is none. But if you go to the cruise maps, if you're buying a product, then if you use the cruisemaps.com/TFT, that is an affiliate link. So I will get a small commission. If you use that, you'll also get 10% off automatically in your, it'll be put in the basket, you'll get 10% off. So if you're buying any of the maps to hang on your wall, like I've got, or the little maps, like I collect the maps, the little maps in the holder. In fact, I might actually swing around because they also launched, for those Kunard fans, they also launched, I think you might have seen that there. They have this Queen Mary 2. I'm hoping they're going to launch more actually of those drawings. I really love that Queen Mary 2 drawing. If you order those, that is an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anything more, but if you do use the cruisemaps.com/TFT, but you're right, they don't actually have any tracking to see who's sending people to the Cruise Globe. I might suggest that to them because that might also be interesting for them to know who's coming, I guess. So let's have a look. So thanks for that. Chris, I don't know those either. I don't know those at all. But it could be that it's a smaller ship. Are they actually docking there or are they tendering? But I don't know those at all. So if anyone has any more interesting things to add. So Cullen, hi there, another question from Cullen. We're voyaging on the Coral Princess later this year and I have 11 sea days. What do you like to do when you have that much time at sea? So I have the longest consecutive sea days I've had, I think, is 6 or 7. My cruise that I've got, so that's transatlantic. Also, when we did that world cruise, we had a couple of 6 days. I think I've got, in the reposition I'm doing from Alaska to Japan, I think we have 6 sea days. So what do I like to do? So what's terrible is I do work. It's obviously a chance to write scripts, sort out stuff. So I end up working. I like to do exercise. So I do get all my kind of exercise in. But I also like to then so I always like to go to so my day would be, I like to go to, because I love going to the main dining room for breakfast or one of the whatever restaurants open rather than the buffet. So it's a nice, more leisurely start. It feels much more sophisticated. So I will start that. I will go to a lot of enrichment stuff. So normally on those longer cruises, and I'm sure on Coral Princess I'll do that, they're likely to have good enrichment stuff. So I like to go to the enrichment stuff, or if there's any learning stuff, I like to go. I've never been to the arts and crafts classes. I always kind of want to go to the arts and crafts classes, and a princess do have some of those, but I don't do that. So I do more enrichment stuff, and then I catch up on stuff. For me, it's work. For other people, I guess it's reading and stuff. So that's what I do. I often on those days it's more about kind of relaxing, then and a little bit about the eating, and then I will build in afternoon tea slots on those days. But it's more kind of the learning experience, catching up on stuff. So I go with a plan to either catch up on work, and then like Mark would go because he brings a pile of books that he's always wanted to read but never reads. Actually, let me give you a shout out for this. So many of you will know Chris Frame. I think Chris Frame has been as a guest on one of my live streams. He's like a maritime historian. He was on another podcast, The Big Cruise Show. He's just started a new show called The Expert Cruise Show, which I've downloaded. I've only listened to one episode so far, and another one has come. Another one come recently. So I need to really catch up on that. I've been chatting to him a little bit. He was asking some questions about the show. So that's another, if you're looking for a podcast, the Expert Cruise Show, so it's on all the main podcast things. And to made the point about the training given, particularly the cruise butlers are not trained as are hotel butlers. So the butler thing varies a lot. So for example, some cruise lines make a point that all their butlers, for example, on Crystal, you have to be a certain grade to get a butler. They talk about how they're trained by a certain butler institute in London or whatever. Silversea also talk about their butlers being trained, but it is very erratic. So on Kunard, it literally was they hired somebody who'd worked in hotels before. So it is very inconsistent. I think actually MSC also, because they have butlers in Yacht Club, I think in MSC they also talk about they've had some training from some butler thing somewhere. But you're right, it is, a lot of the butlers are just glorified cabin stewards, without demeaning cabin stewards. I've been on some cruises, like on Seabourn, they don't have butlers. I have been in, and my cabin steward has done, I've had 2 cabin stewards on one, and they were just amazing. They were like, made butlers look like terrible. He was so like on it. Carl and Dawn, good to see you. Thanks for the super chat. I got an offer of an upgrade on Carnival Panorama. It didn't allow me to turn it down. Will that affect any possible offers? No, it won't. Don't worry about that. So the thing also, Carl and Dawn, is many of those offers now. I'm assuming, because there's 2 types of offers you'll get. One of them will be just that email would offers you to go and put a bid in online. Because you get that doesn't necessarily mean there is actually upgrades available, because it's kind of it's a generated thing. So I know I've been on cruises before where I get them. And I can look online and I can see that all the cabins above me are basically full. Now, there's of course a chance that people will drop out or whatever. So because one comes doesn't necessarily mean that cabins are actually available for upgrade. So you may be rejected just because there are none. But it won't affect, they don't really keep a little of a list of, it's very hit and miss. Obviously, they'll tend to go for people who bid high if some come free. With those upgrade bids, what they're trying to do is push everybody up. So if they can get, instead of in the olden days they used to upgrade people for status or whatever, but that is they want to push everybody up a grade because it's easier to sell inside cabins, ocean views. Those are the ones they can discount more, hide the discount more. So they want to push everybody up. If you did another thing, so the other type which you see less frequently is where they, like Cullen America did sometimes, where they will come and say, look, would you like to upgrade an XY cabin? It's going to cost X amount. We need to know within 10 hours or something. Often they send that to lots of people. Normally by your travel agent, it could be gone by the time you've got it. But they don't have sort of like a hit list of it. So don't worry about that at all. The upgrade thing is there really to make money. So if you're in and you're making money, they will be happy. They will be happy with that. Let's have a look. Andy, have you ever been on a cruise where there's been a serious crime, for example, a murder? So certainly, no, fortunately, I haven't been on a cruise where there's been a serious crime. Obviously crime happens on a cruise ship, and I guess often you won't even know if it's happening. But the only time I've been on a cruise where there has been a crime, which is one which involved, we're on a Cunard, a trip. I think we were on. I think it was when we were on that leg of the world cruise. Or was it when we were on Queen Mary 2? 4 weeks. Anyway, we were in sort of going through parts of Asia. Anyway, we were on Queen Mary, on a Kunard ship, and we had heard this rumors that 2 of the dancers had been caught shoplifting, and they, that night in the show, the 2 dancers, a male dancer and a female dancer, were not in the show. The next day we saw them being shuffled off the ship. So it wasn't, obviously shoplifting is a crime, and it's not as bad as murder, I guess, in the scheme of things. So that's, we became more of it aware from the rumblings. But luckily, I haven't been on a cruise where there's been anything that serious. The closest I came to that was I was on Symphony of the Seas. I boarded the day they arrested one of the cabin stewards who'd been planting spy cameras in some of the cabins to film people. That's the closest I got, and hopefully the closest I will get to that. Rhonda's written the word question, but I haven't seen the question, so I'm guessing that's coming up. Rhonda. Janice, have you been to Sky Garden in London? It looks beautiful. I know you need a reservation. How? So yes, I have been to Sky Garden. It is very nice. The Sky Garden itself, if I remember correctly, is free. There's also a restaurant there. I've been to lunch in the restaurant there, which was fine. It's great. I don't know how far in advance it opens, but I do know, particularly in summer, obviously it's very manic. I'm sure the site will say when it opens, but it is really nice. It's a great view. It's really good fun. Oh, here we are, Rhonda. We're booking a cruise to Japan with Oceania in 2027. I love cruising Japan. How long before and after would you stay in Japan? So I'm assuming that you're staying out of Tokyo. I have spent, before my last cruise, I've cruised Japan 3 times, twice departing in Japan. So I spent 3 days the first time. When I did my Japan, I was doing Japan through to China, Manila. I spent 4 days, so that my flight actually got there in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, so I had all that day. I spent 4 days in Tokyo, and one of those days I used to use the Shinkansen to go out to Nagoya for the day on a day trip, which was amazing getting to use that. But I would try and, if you possibly can, spend at least 4 days in Tokyo. There's plenty to do, plenty to see. It's really easy to get around with the metro. Really inexpensive. You can buy a metro pass if you've got an Apple phone. I think you mentioned before, in the wallet. I don't know if I can't remember if you're an iPhone user, but if you actually go to wallet, I'll try and show you this. If you go to wallet, of course I'm messing it up now. That's probably doing live demos, isn't it? If you go to your wallet in an iPhone, and you'll see there's a plus button on the wallet. It gives you the opportunity to buy the card for the metro. You can just add it on there. It's really good, and you can use your phone. But I would spend 4 days. Now, I do have a series of those. Remember I spoke about the shorts a little bit if you're here, of things I did in Tokyo. I didn't do one for the last time, but Tokyo is fantastic, loads to do. In fact, I have a cruise that ends in Tokyo in September, and I'm kicking myself now because I'm actually flying, because it's quite a long, I'm going to Alaska and spending a couple of days in Seattle, Anchorage, blah, blah, blah. It's a 3-week cruise, and actually I'm getting off the ship and flying home, and I'm really annoyed because there's so much to do in Tokyo that I haven't done yet. So I'm a bit annoyed about that, and I can't change it because it's an air miles flight that I got. So definitely at least 4 days. Depending on where you're going, you might want to add some land places in, like that Shinkansen goes to Kyoto, but things like Nagoya, I went to the Toyota Museum, which was amazing, all the history of Toyota, absolutely fascinating. But of course, loads to do in Tokyo itself. Josh, what would you recommend to do in the ports of Morocco? So Josh, if you take a look back at the live stream that I did with Karen Worrell about 3 or 4 weeks ago, she is an absolute expert. She was the guest speaker that I had on the Explorer Journeys trip. But if you go to her, or if you go to her site, cruiseshipkaren.com, cruiseshipkaren.com, all kind of one thing together. She has some video clips and tips on things to do in Morocco. She is an absolute expert on those ports. She's been there many, many times, way more than I am. That's what I would recommend. She's going to give you much better tips. Now, I didn't do a lot of exploring there because I'm actually going back in October to the ports of Morocco, and I've booked some excursions there. But she, in that live stream, if you can scroll through, you'll find the question on Morocco. She talks about it, but maybe if you just go to the site, so cruiseshipkaren.com. The Wu-Tang Life, I'm planning a Nile cruise for Egypt, 10 to 14 days. What company did you use? And do they have solar cabins or solar supplements? Solar supplements I found very challenging to get for Nile cruises, but I'll tell you a couple of options. So I actually used Amma Waterways, which was fine. Viking do an amazing trip, beautiful ship. They're very pricey, though. They have 2 ships now. But also take a look at Gate 1, for example. I feel like they might do solar supplements as well. But certainly for me, Amma didn't do one, and Viking won't do one. But also maybe some of the travel agents may be able. I didn't find any solar supplements when I did research. Susan asking me, I'm looking forward to joining you for the Panama Canal cruise. Any chance of doing a Mekong River group? Quite a few people asked me about that. I'm just concerned that I won't get many people on it. I am looking at doing a European river cruise, and I'm still holding back on that because I'm nervous about just how many people will be on that. But so I have thought about it. I'm not actively planning it, I guess, is the quick answer. Someone asked me, have been on the Indies archipelago? No, is the answer. Steinwald, Matt Chen. Barbara, good to see you here again. Our travel agent found a very attractive deal, almost 50% on a Regent cruise this October. We can't fit in, assuming low bookings. You comment on cruise lines make these decisions this far out. So, okay, it's interesting, Barbara, because we're seeing a couple of the ultra luxury lines doing these deals. So I think they're also having to kind of match each other at the moment. So what we're hearing from the cruise lines is they're all selling as groups. They're talking about they're selling up between 108 and 110% full, very much focused, particularly on the Caribbean, mixed in terms of Europe. And we're seeing a lot of them actually moving ships back. So certainly, I'm not sure where that Regent deal is, but I've seen quite a lot of deals, Seabourn, some Regent, Oceania doing some as well. But what they will tend to do is normally 90 days out, 3 months out is when final balance is. But I guess a lot of it will just depend on how the sailings are, how they're seeing sailings going. And it is a little bit hit and miss now. Some of the deals that I'm seeing, and I don't know if this is the one, I'm seeing increasingly use of flash sales. So that deal kind of comes and goes very quickly over a weekend, like Memorial Weekend or something like that. So some of those, I'm seeing them particularly at the end of a quarter. So like I've seen a lot end of June, for example. There was a whole flurry of stuff sort of mid-June. So it could be that because they're hitting their targets. But it's interesting because some lines are very sold out. So, Viking, for example, have said that they have sold 87% of their 2025 itinerary. And so they're really focusing their sales team now on 2026, which they've already sold a third, if I remember correctly. Steinwald Matt Chen. How would you compare Hong Kong's newer Kai Tak cruise terminal with the older Ocean Center? For the latter, do more reasonable premium casual lines visit there. So the Ocean Center terminal is, location-wise, is absolutely awesome because it's right in the heart of Hong Kong. You're right next to where the Star Ferry is. You get a beautiful view. Actually, if you're there overnight or late sailing out, you can have the whole light show that they do every night. You can get off the ship. You can jump on the Star Ferry. It's just fantastic. It's all there. The Kai Tak cruise terminal is quite a way out of town. It's much more of a hassle to get there. It's in Kowloon Island. It's a real pain actually to sort of get to and from, whereas you can just hop off the ship, jump on the Star Ferry. You can head up to Victoria Peak really easily on the tram and stuff like that. So it's actually, the thing with the Ocean Center is it's really badly signposted. We got completely lost in there trying to find the ship when we sailed out of there. We sailed in there once and out of there once, but once we actually boarded the ship there, it was an absolute nightmare. because it's basically in a shopping center. But if you ever can get a cruise that goes into the ocean center, it's brilliant. Now, the ocean center tends these days to have the small ships. So you'll tend to have your more kind of ultra luxury ships. All of the premium lines, bigger lines, will be out of the Kai-Tak cruise terminal. It's very unusual these days to have any of those in the ocean center, because Kai-Tak is also where they have the facilities, they can cope with the numbers. So that's basically, I don't know of any that, we actually got on Queen Elizabeth there, but when we came on Queen Mary 2 to Hong Kong, we were out of Kai-Tak, and from what I can see is Queen Elizabeth and Victoria now out at Kai-Tak. I have not been on Star Clipper. It is on my list to do, although I actually I'm focusing more on the Windstar than the Star Clipper ships. Star Clipper looks good. It's a little bit more rough and ready. That's the right term, authentic, if you want to call it that way. So I've had more mixed views on people who've been on Star Clipper. I really, really want to go on windsurf and stuff from the Windstar group. Michael, I get asked the question around favorite cruise lines a lot. So if you had to pick one cruise line to sell for the rest of your life, which one would you pick? So this is very difficult because a lot of it hinges around who I'm traveling with and whatever. But in the spirit of answering your question, so you can see my Wi-Fi's gone a little bit funny again there, which is annoying. I can see on my little tracker I've gone a bit blurry. Sorry about that. I would go with a smaller ship, because I like smaller ships, because it's probably going to give you the itinerary. So because if I'm having to sell one for life, I'd want to go on a line that's got very interesting itineraries, going to lots of quirky places. So like an Oceania, I'm assuming budget's not an issue. So like an Oceania would be a good compromise, because they do have incredible itineraries all around the world. Obviously, if money wasn't an issue, I would go on something like a Regent. Would probably be my other choice, because they have very nice ships, really good included excursions and stuff. So I would have to argue between Regent and Silversea, to argue that up. Right, we have churned our way through I hopefully have answered many of the questions. Carl's asked a question: do you do the hidden ducks? I have never done the hidden ducks actively. I've once seen a hidden duck. That's the only time I've done. I haven't collected those. SL asking the question: tracking flash sales. I will tell you the best way of doing them: sign up for all the cruise line email newsletters and follow them on social media. So Facebook, Instagram, the flash sales pop up there. If you follow any of the lines you're interested in, make sure you interact with them, like cruise stuff, because then the algorithm will show those flash sales. But definitely they come up a lot on social media, Instagram, Facebook especially, and on the email newsletters. But if you are using social media, if you're on a Facebook person or Instagram person, just make sure that you're interacting with cruise content, because that tells the algorithm to show those up to you. So thanks, everybody. Thanks very much. Now, next week, let's talk about next week. I'm going to be on, as I mentioned, next Saturday, I will be boarding Sun Princess. I'm actually going to try and run a live stream. I've only been on Sun Princess for 24 hours, but I'm going to try and run a live stream. So I will set one up. I'll check the Wi-Fi, see how it goes. Wi-Fi wasn't great on Sky Princess, so we'll see in Sun Princess in the Med. Hopefully it'll be better. So take a look for that. I will definitely try next Sunday, usual time, to run a live stream. So have a great rest of the week. And thanks for joining me. As always, thanks for the fabulous questions, and watch that Explorer Journeys video. Take care.